Hello Cloud Pedagogians, welcome back. Today we are going to learn security and the AWS shared responsibility model. In order to begin using AWS effectively, it's important to understand how security works in the cloud. You already know that by using AWS, you won't be managing every single aspect of hosting your solutions. You will rely on AWS to manage portions of your workload for you, taking care of that undifferentiated heavy lifting like running the day-to-day of the operations of the data center and managing the various virtualization techniques employed to keep your AWS account isolated from, say, my AWS account. So the question is, who is ultimately responsible for security in AWS? Is it you, the customer, or AWS? The answer? Well, the correct answer is yes. Both you and AWS are responsible for securing your AWS environment. Let's explore this concept a little bit more. AWS follows something called the shared responsibility model. We don't view solutions built on AWS as one singular thing to be secure. We see it as a collection of parts that build on each other. AWS is responsible for the security of some aspects and others you are responsible for their security. Together, you and AWS following best practices, you have an environment that you can trust. Let's take a look at the shared responsibility model diagram. You can see we have the responsibility of security broken into two groupings, you and AWS, each being responsible for different components. We describe AWS as being responsible for security of the cloud. For example, AWS is responsible for the AWS global infrastructure. And when I say global infrastructure, I mean the physical infrastructure that the cloud is running on. This is iron and concrete buildings with fences protected by security guards and various other security measures. It also includes the AWS global backbone or the private fiber cables that connect each AWS region to each other. Managing the security of these pieces is all on AWS. You don't need to worry about that as far as security goes. Then there is the infrastructure and various software components that run AWS services. This includes compute databases, storage, and networking. AWS is also responsible for securing these services from the host operating system up through the virtualization layer. For example, let's say you want to host some virtual machines or VMs on the cloud. We primarily use the service Amazon EC2 for this use case. When you create a VM using EC2, AWS manages the physical host that the VM is placed on as well as everything up through the hypervisor level. If the host operating system or the hypervisor needed to be patched or updated, that is the responsibility of AWS. This is good news for you as the customer as it greatly reduces the operational overhead and running a scalable and elastic solution leveraging virtualization. We will talk more about EC2 and elastic solution in upcoming lessons. For now, let's get back to the security aspects. So if AWS manages the underlying hardware up through the virtualization layer, what are you responsible for? Well, you are responsible for security in the cloud. Similar to how a construction company builds a building and it's on them to make sure that the building itself is stable and secure. Then you can rent an apartment in that building. It's up to you to lock the door to your apartment. Security of the building and security in the building are two different elements. For security in the cloud, the base layer is secured by AWS. It's up to you to lock the door. So, for our EC2 example, you are responsible for tasks like patching the operating system of your VMs, encrypt the data in transit and at rest, configuring firewalls and controlling who has access to these resources as well as controlling how much access they have. The main thing to understand is that you own your data in AWS. You are ultimately responsible for ensuring that your data is encrypted, secure, and has proper access controls in place. In many cases, AWS services offer native features that you can enable to achieve a secure solution. It's up to you to actually use them. In other cases, you may devise your own solutions to meet compliance and security standards for your own specific industry or use case. So that's the shared responsibility model at a high level. I don't want you to keep something in mind though, but that's you should understand as we move through this course regarding the shared responsibility model. Each AWS service is different and serves a different purpose and a different use case. Therefore, the shared responsibility model can vary from service to service as well. This is a good thing as you get to decide how to build your solution on AWS. There are some important things to note that you maintain complete control of your data and you are responsible for managing the security related to your content. Here are some examples of your responsibilities in context. Choosing a region for AWS resources in accordance with data power regulations. Implementing data protection mechanisms such as encryption and managing backups. Using access control to limit who has access to your data and AWS resources. With that, I would like to wrap up this session and see you in the next video. Until then, bye.